1, 2. Check 1, 2, 4, 5, 10. Hello, everybody. Glad you're here hanging out with us this fine Wednesday. Thanks for being here. And we're going to be talking fish today. We're going to be talking all kinds of cool stuff. So I'm glad you are hanging out with us. And it should be a fun time. It should be a fun time now that we are thoroughly into fish keeping season. I mean, it's September.
It's on.
It's first week of September. It's go time. Things are changing and everything is just, you know, fall is in the air. We have this weekend in the Chicagoland area a high of Friday, Saturday, and Sunday that isn't even going to hit 70 degrees. So
that's fun.
Somewhat excited about that because while I like summertime, I would prefer summertime to be like San Diego weather, 72 to 74 and sunny pretty much all the time. I don't want to have to break a sweat and I don't want to be super chilly. So yeah, I'm a high maintenance temperature type of guy.
Pretty much.
So I know I am. So yeah, tonight we are going to be, of course, answering your questions a little bit later. I wanted to discuss guppies because I think it's that time of year when people are really starting to think about their aquariums and what they want to do with them for this fish keeping season. And inevitably, it's this thing, right? I think a lot of us, we circle around to different fish and we change up our tanks from time to time and we're like, okay, let's do some cichlids. Let's not do cichlids. Let's do a community tank. Let's do a nano tank. Let's do a live bearer tank. And one of those things, at least for me, always circles back around to the live bearers, the platies, the guppies, the mollies. I haven't kept swordtails in forever, and I've really been thinking about that.
You have?
Yeah, I have been thinking about that for a while now because they're awesome. And at the last Greenwater Aquarius Society members auction where they give you points instead of dollars and you can bid with points, you get 300 of them. There was a really sweet pair of swordtails, but I'm happy to report the person who won them wasn't me, but the person who won them, they have been breeding. So
excellent.
It's pretty awesome. They were really cool. So
lots of babies.
At some point I'm going to have to fulfill my need to do some type of a live bear, whether it's guppies, endlers, platies, swordtails, I don't know, but something's gonna have to happen because I feel the need. We do have a giveaway tonight as well, so that will be a little bit later. I found something cool I think that we can do. It's right over here.
I was gonna say, where is it?
In this
there it is.
area. Not so much here or here, but right down here outside of your ability to see things. Yes, by the way, I am a little bit burnt, as you can see. I've got tan line right there. Check it out. We spent the weekend on the motorcycles, or at least I spent 2 days and you spent one, and
correct.
That made us a little bit, we got a little bit of sun there, so that was fun. In the land of videos, what's been going on this week in the land of videos? Well, Sunday I did a comparison video of 2 awesome fish. If you haven't checked it out, it's definitely worth it. It's a question that we have been asked a few times. It's something that constantly comes up when people are looking at stocking their aquariums, especially with smaller fish. So if you haven't seen it, check it out. On Monday, we did the Tank Talk podcast, and I believe that episode, we record them all at once, and then I'm never quite sure which ones get released in which order. But that was, what was the Tank Talk podcast? Somebody pipe in. It was, I think it was how to look for healthy fish? I can't remember which one now because, you know, it's been 2 days and my buying fish online. Yeah, I knew it was something like that.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Dr. Jekyll. Yes, buying fish online and just the advantages, disadvantages. A really fun conversation. John is here. Was buying fish online. He's probably like, ... moron. Thanks, John. Thank you.
Good timing,
Dr.
John.
Jekyll. Yep. Emma's here too. That's pretty awesome. So yeah, that was a fun episode. Those last 4 that we did, I had so much fun. There was a lot to talk about. So if you haven't seen it, the Tank Talk podcast, go there on YouTube or any of your favorite podcasting platforms and just chill for an hour, hour and a half and listen to fish stuff. So that was Monday. On Wednesday, which is today, the small scape, you did something. What did you do?
I did the little filter from Seche, the 250.
The 250, you reviewed it on a smaller tank. So a couple weeks ago, I did a review on the Seche 320. love that filter. It is still right over there running on that same tank, and that is the most crystal clearest water on that side of the fish room. And now that those fish are basically through quarantine, they've been looking great. Guess what? That filter is going to go to another tank and then another tank, and it's going to suck everything out of that tank. Those Sea Shark filters are insanely good at mechanical
And
filtration.
quiet.
And very quiet, yeah, because they're in the tank. So no opportunity to put water on the floor. So if you haven't seen any of those reviews and you want to see a even smaller, little tiny cute one, right? A little tiny cute Sea Shark Pro Nano.
It's
that
small.
250 is a little bitty guy, perfect for small tanks. A lot of you are always asking, hey, type of filter for a small aquarium. Man, I think that's got to be up there on everybody's list, at least to check it out.
Yeah.
Not out yet. When it does come out, keepfishkeeping.com. Well, it'll be there. Probably one of the first places you'll be able to find it. So, so that was today. Tomorrow we'll have the Prime Timers video out for you. Got some things to talk about. Sunday, I'm going to have a cool species profile for you, one I've been wanting to do for a while. Fish we've had in the fish room for a while. I hate this. We get in all these fish, and I would say at least 2/3 of the fish we get in, I haven't profiled them. And then by the time I think about it, it's like, oh, we've sold them all. And then I rotate, and I know it's going to be 3 or 4 months before we get them in again. So I finally nailed one down. It's like, okay, it's here. Let's deal with it. So that's the land of videos. Places where we're going to be. Greenwater Aquarium Society in Tinley Park, Illinois. That is coming up on Saturday the 14th. That is the weekend after next. And it is game on with the swaps. Website will be updated usually 4 or 5 days before the swap. So if you are doing the pre-orders, which we always recommend, so that way you know the fish are going to be there when you are there. So the pre-orders, you just go to the website, do your pre-order there. That's the 14th. The 22nd is the Greater Chicago Cichlid Association swap. That's a big swap in Northbrook, Illinois. Only costs, so Greenwater's free. GCC is $5 to get in, which is next to nothing. A lot of vendors there. And then Quad City, which is the 29th of September, is in Davenport, Iowa. Also free. That is the biggest swap. If not in the United States, it's got to be top 3. Because, and don't get me wrong, I haven't been to every single swap in the U.S.
No, you haven't.
But it's huge because you're bringing in 2,000-3,000 people. They're free to get in, hundreds of tables, and it's a lot of fun. So that's what we're gearing up for here in September. So lots and lots going on. It's going to be awesome.
Yes, Whip. Quad Cities Sundays. Yeah.
Quad City is Sunday the 29th. Yep, that is true. So that's what's happening. That's where we've been, where we are going, what we've been doing. I hope you have all been doing awesome. Bye. No kidding. A 7-minute live stream. Yeah, I just wanted to say that.
Oh my gosh.
And now, Dan, we're out. So do you have anything to add before we get into our subject for the evening?
No. We got Oink here.
Yep,
we got
Whip.
Noelle, Whip. We got a lot of people in the house.
So thank you
Zen
to
Ginger.
our moderators who are keeping it all in check and everything
The
like
guys
that.
at the bottom.
Yep, pretty awesome. And thank you to all of you for being here. So like I said, tonight I wanted to start out, and this isn't going to take a long time, but I just wanted to talk a little bit about guppies because I'm sure some of you who are here right now, probably almost all of you, no, better yet, if you have never kept guppies, I want to know. You could say, hey man, you know what? Just haven't done it yet. Doesn't mean you never will, but if you have never kept guppies,
raise your hand.
In the chat there, be like, nope, not me. And then we'll all point like, no, just kidding. We won't guppy shame you, but I would think, I would be willing to guess, man, I got guppy shamed on that live stream. I'm never going back again.
They really called me out.
Yeah, they called me a guppy, a bad guppy name. An anti-guppyite. That's what it is. All right. If you haven't kept them, you're an anti-guppyite.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
That would label you for sure.
All right. So who knows? Who remembers what that's from?
Oh boy, here it comes.
The person got called an anti-dentite. Oh, that was one of the funniest things I'd ever seen. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's that many people who are going to know what the anti-dentite was. We'll see. Put it in the chat if you remember. Okay, so guppies. Why do we keep guppies? So let's start with you, Joanna.
Yeah.
Guppies. And by the way, I got some cool Whip, Seinfeld. I knew you were probably going to know that. It's like we probably, over the last 25 years, have watched the exact same things and didn't even know it. So Guppies. Check these bad boys out. There's a whole bunch of them. We've had many different types of guppies in the past. Is there anything that's appealing about guppies to you?
Their tails.
That's your deep and profound
Yes.
information, their tails.
Yes.
So if you learn nothing else tonight, know that guppies have tails.
They have beautiful tails.
They have beautiful tails, and that the only reason Joanna would ever keep them is because they have these tails.
Tails.
That's it, huh?
Yeah, it's very unusual for a fish to have beautiful tails.
Oh, yeah, I can't think of another fish on the face of the earth that...
You
has
asked
a
what
big-
my favorite thing is. That's what my favorite thing
It's a
is.
legitimate favorite thing. It's a legitimate favorite thing.
There's just, it's like a candy store.
Yeah.
What color do you want?
So I think we need to address one thing right from the start. And I want to do this early so that if you hear nothing else, this is a really important point that I want to make about guppies. Thing number one, be careful where you buy your guppies from. And I've mentioned this before in the past, and those of you who have lived the guppy tragedy, right? If you've ever had a guppy tragedy life in your life, you're going to know that sometimes where you buy your guppies makes all the difference in the world. And I've told this story a million times where for the longest time, we would get guppies from the big box stores and even some of our
Yeah.
local fish stores, and I could not get them to live. It was so frustrating for me because you hear everywhere, oh, guppies are the easiest fish in the world, like Danios and white clouds. And I'm like, I can't get these things to stay alive more than a few weeks before they all just kind of die. And you get them and they look okay, and then they wind up in your tank, and I've got the water for them. So I have the harder water with a higher pH. So everything should be ideal. And it's not like I'm throwing them in an uncycled tank. You're like, hey, here's an ammonia spike followed by your nitrite spike. Good luck, little guppy. That's not the case, right? Well-cycled tank, great water parameters, and dead guppies pretty much every time I kept them for years. And then everything changed. And if you remember, I don't know how many of you have been around the channel for the last 6-7 years, but at one point, do you remember the Guppy party tank?
Yeah, I do.
The Guppy party tank was the result of me finally getting guppies from somebody in the Chicagoland area that was breeding. And of course, guppies, once you get them breeding, they're actually really easy to breed. But finally, I got some guppies from a Chicagoland breeder, and they were invincible. They were every bit the hardy fish that you have heard them be, and people have said that they are. They were, and they were breeding like crazy. So my advice to you is, if you are having problems, this is the long-winded thing to say, if you're having problems with guppies, try to find someone who is either A, quarantining their guppies for a while. So Flip Aquatics is a channel sponsor. Most of you know that, but flipaquatics.com, they sell guppies, and they're really getting into the guppy situation, which is cool. And they quarantine their fish for at least 2 weeks, which means if there's going to be guppy die-off, it's probably going to happen on them. Okay, so that's important. So that means when you get your guppies, you're going to be in good shape. If you can find a breeder, the other one I recommend is Twin Cities Guppies. That was the guppies that you're looking at right here.
Yeah.
Were like the great-great-great-grandparents of the original Dumbo ear guppies, and I wasn't selectively breeding these things, so please understand the Dumbo ears that you see here, those were like, not these ones, those were from a store, but in that 20 long, the Dumbo ears that I had were from Ken Lee in Twin Cities Guppies, and he takes a lot of care and time in breeding these fish, selectively breeding them. They are amazing. And those fish, that was another one where we just moved them from tank to tank to tank, and we had a few strains from him at one time. They were really good. If you're going to get guppies, they can be price-wise all over the place, right? I've seen guppies at the big box stores for a couple bucks. If you want a really nice trio, a male and a couple females, you might pay 50, 60, 70 bucks for some of the more unusual strains with the better, the interesting tails, and not only just the colors, but the fin varieties as well, the shapes of the fins. I'm not a guppy expert when it comes to that and what they're called, but oh my gosh, you can really quickly spend a lot of money on guppies if you so choose.
Yeah.
So we have lesson number one: get your guppies from a reputable breeder if you're having problems. Now, your local fish store might be buying them from somebody local. So please, around here, I think what was happening is the big box stores, the local fish stores, they were all getting them from the same place, and that place was getting them from the same place. And then pretty soon, if you had a problem at a big box store and they were all sharing the same vendor, there were issues. But if your local fish store is actually buying guppies from local people who are breeding them, probably going to have a lot better luck because it's really not that much different than what we did. Our guppies came from local breeders and they were awesome. The cool thing too is when you get like the mutt guppies and you mix them together, I'll tell you, some of the offspring that you can get are
Stunning.
crazy. I mean, remember some of those all-stars we had in the guppy party tank?
Yes.
And if I had more time and more ambition, I would have tried to line breed those colors, but I had neither the time nor the ambition to do so. But they were kicking out some crazy colors. So it can be really, really exciting in that respect, just to see those guys and the variety that you can get. Downside, are there any downsides to guppies besides if you buy them from a place where they're not so hardy?
Well, if you only want a couple guppies, that may be a problem.
It could be. Brian says, and right on cue, I can't even give my guppies away. Yes. So here's the part of the guppy situation we don't like to talk about a lot, and that is if you love guppies and you care for guppies and you give guppies everything they need, guppies are going to love you, but more importantly, they're going to love one another. And when they love one another, they produce a lot of guppy babies. And sometimes it can be difficult to figure out what one does with all the guppy babies, because if you're not in a big area like we are, like Chicagoland area, we can move guppies if we wanted to, provided that they're the right strains. If you're in a smaller area where there's not as many people, maybe the fish hobby is not as robust as it is in some of the larger metropolitan areas, now you're left with all these guppies and you have to figure out, okay, what am I going to do with them? And it's like y'all are just knowing where I'm going to go next. Pet's Corner, feeder fish. It's not fun to say. When you're breeding guppies, you really got to pay attention to two things. One, overpopulation, because they do slow down. If you get a tank that's too populated, you can get a crash in your guppy tanks if you have too many. And then also just the culling method, right? The culling that has to go on, because not all of your guppy babies are going to be the same. Some of them are going to be a little funky looking. Some of them are going to have really bad genetics. Some of them might have bent spines. Some of them might have crooked tails, to the point where you're like, yeah, this fish might survive, but it is not going to be living its best life. I will say we were able to deal with that issue because we had some very large fish in our fishermen. And I am not, and I want to be super clear about this, I am not a person who enjoys feeding fish to other fish. I don't enjoy it. I don't think it's something. Now, some of you might do that. You might have larger fish. We're like, this is all they eat. Totally cool. Get that. But for me personally, I'm not somebody who wants to be like, hey, let's go ahead and scoop out the guppies, throw them in this tank, and watch them all get eaten. Yes, when you are overrun with guppies, there's sometimes you got to do something with them. Otherwise, I mean, if you can't sell them and you can't give them away, like some of you have already said, it's like, well, what's the next best thing? And that is food, live, healthy foods for some of your larger fish. So there is that, and you just have to be aware of it. So be thinking about, if you're going to be keeping guppies, what are you going to do with the offspring? Now, there are other things that you can do as well that go along similar lines. I think one of the things that people ask the most about guppies, hey, I've got a guppy population. Are there any fish I can put in the guppy tank that will control the population without destroying my adults? Yes, the answer to that is absolutely. Part of it depends on the size of the aquarium that you have. So things like dwarf gouramis, the blues, the golds, the opalines, those larger gouramis, maybe not those, because those you have to have a pretty large tank. I would like to have at least a 40 breeder to have one of those, and you still got to be careful. They're not going to chase the males around. But the dwarf gourami, for the most part, will, I'm not saying that if you've got a guppy explosion already, you're not going to throw a dwarf gourami in there and be like, oh, but yeah, that was good, they're all gone. But if you've got a small number of fry and you're like, I don't really want any more, then something like a dwarf gourami might work out okay. The other types of fish that might work out that are going to leave your adults alone, usually, but not always, are smaller types of cichlids. So I'm thinking like your apistogramma. They have a decent sized mouth, most of them, even though they stay small. They will certainly eat guppy fry. Crebensis would be a really good option for eating guppy fry, most likely leaving the adults alone. Bolivian ram, not the German blue, because I think the water parameters and the heat are so different between the German blue and the guppy might not be the best mix, but like a Bolivian ram would certainly be, it would be able to deal with the water parameters that guppies enjoy. So some of those smaller cichlids might be able to control populations. I'm not saying they're always going to like, oh, all my guppy fry are taken care of. And I'm not saying sometimes they won't get aggressive towards your adults. Every cichlid is different. Every fish is different. So just keep that in mind. It's not like a foolproof, oh, this is always definitely going to work, because it might not. Water parameters. I mentioned it already. Generally speaking, your guppies are going to thrive the most with harder water and a higher pH. We kept ours at a GH and KH of 10 degrees, pH of close to 8. Pretty much, as long as you've got a pH over neutral, over 7, and your GH and KH are upper single digits, you're probably going to be okay, but guppies can go even higher, right? They can go into the mid-teens easily for your GH and KH, and that pH of 8 to 8.2, usually going to work out just fine. Tank size, what do you think?
At least a 10.
At least a 10? Yeah, I would say so. I think we've had a couple 10-gallon tanks with guppies. The one you're looking at right now is that 20 long that had the Dumbo ears. But we've had 10-gallon tanks where they bred. They were doing great. Done a lot of 20 gallons with guppies. I've had them in 75 gallons. So obviously the larger the tank that you have, the more likely they are to produce a lot more offspring. Another way to cut down on offspring is your feeding. If you want a lot of babies, feed them live baby brine. Give the adults a sufficient amount of food, a couple, 2-3 times a day, so they're not hungry, not looking to eat the fry. Give them a lot of top cover. All right, so you always hear that. How do I make guppy babies? Well, guess what? The opposite is true if you don't want a lot of guppy babies. Don't give them a lot of cover, right? Don't, especially top cover. So remove the guppy grass, remove the hornwort. Yes, you could still have other types of plants in there, but a lot of that top cover, get rid of it. Don't feed the live baby brine. Just crush up some flakes, or make the flakes smaller so that the adults can eat them, and the fry not as much. Maybe only feed the adults once a day, once every couple days. That's going to make them a little bit more hungry, and they're most likely going to take care of the fry on their own. So anytime you've got a community tank, I already mentioned some fish that will probably take joy in having some free snacks in the aquarium. But the more of a community setup you have, the less likely you are to have a lot of fry, especially if those other communities are going to be community fish are going to be a little bit larger. Temperatures. Here's another thing too. With the guppies that are found in most stores these days, I think that they're really going to be awesome 76 to 80. 80 is getting a little high. Under 76 might be a little bit low. A lot of people try to keep guppies in room temperature because, we have wild guppies and they go down in cooler temperatures. That's not the same strains that you're buying at the stores that are coming from overseas, maybe Vietnam, Indonesia, Singapore. Those guppies are optimized for warmer temperatures. And so room temperature, they tend not to digest their food well. You start to see them become very inactive, stop eating, and then eventually have issues. So I think those are the main points, right? We're feeding them, we're giving them the right size tank, we're controlling populations if we need to, we're knowing how to breed them, how not to breed them. What say you? Do you have it?
Well, there's another way to keep population down.
How's that?
Only keep males.
I was going to say that, and then I thought about that 4 times as I was blabbing over all those other things. I'm like, males, and then I forgot. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
Males, sometimes the males will be a little bit aggressive towards one another, but I know a lot of people have kept males only. I mean, I guess you could, keeping females only might be tough because that's the other thing too, is sometimes people be like, hey man, I only had like a couple females and next thing I know, I got 50 guppies. I'm like, yeah, because those females can hold the offspring for a little bit of time. And then next thing you know, you've got some little babies, even though you don't have a male in the tank. So be careful there. But yeah, the male only tanks can certainly cut down on the fry. So, the aquarium crib says, are we going to have time to ask questions later? Abso-freaking-lutely, man. So, we're going to be taking your questions and all that. Before we do, Danny, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. I'm cycling a 210 planted tank with umbrella palm, dwarf sage, giant val, crypts, anubias on rocks, and wood. That sounds like a great tank, by the way.
Sounds beautiful.
I wanted to do a North American native tank. My pH is what stock would you suggest? pH is high. Okay. So you got a planted tank. And in some ways, that's going to really limit you to what you do, because you've got a tank size that would be really good for, I mean, you could do some of the really nice sunfish. You could do yellow perch. And I don't remember if yellow perch eat plants, because I didn't keep them in a planted tank. I kept them with artificial plants. But a tank that size, I am telling you, you'll have to research. I don't know what yellow perch do to plants, but holy cow, you have the perfect tank for yellow perch. And I promise you, they are going to be stunning. The only issue there is that's a big fish, and you're not going to be able to keep a lot of the small, like nano-ish types of native fish. And I'm thinking a lot of the gobies. They would absolutely find gobies tasty. But if you wanted to go smaller, then yeah, you could do a lot of the gobies. I mean, there are a lot of freshwater gobies in North America that you could choose from. The rainbow shiners to go with those gobies would be absolutely awesome. What else? I don't know. I'm not a super expert on natives, but you know, when I think natives, I'm instantly going to like the crappie, and the crappie are really cool too, because they've got that silvery sort of color to them. But you could go bigger, but be really careful. If you're going to do any type of bluegill, type of sunfish, they can be every bit as aggressive as South American cichlids, as your African cichlids. So, and quite frankly, a lot, not all, but a lot of the sunfish or the bluegill type fish that we see from North America, when you catch them and you take them out of water, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing looking fish. I'm going to take this home and put it in an aquarium. And then they do, and you're like, this is like a green tan fish, because their color looks really good when the sun, especially the sun or light, is hitting them from the side. They don't look very good when the light is coming from the top. Same thing with bass. There are some cool looking bass out there, especially the striped bass. But when you put them in a tank, you're like, oh, I've got this silvery, tannish green fish that, by the way, is going to make a complete mess and is going to eat anything that can fit into its mouth. And even the smallmouth and the largemouth bass have a big mouth. So those stocking options, and I don't think a 210 is really a great idea for a full-grown bass, because those fish get huge. That's why I suggest, if you want larger fish, I'm telling you, just a group of yellow perch, if they will tolerate the plants, would be awesome. If not, go rainbow shiners and gobies. That would be really cool too.
Noelle had said, I tried and failed to keep guppies for years, then watched Irene's GHKH video, checked, and both GHKH were 1 to 2 super soft. Eureka! 1 teaspoon of equilibrium per gallon of water change equals hundreds of happy guppies.
Yeah, for sure. That 1 to 2 is very, very low.
So super low.
It's always one of those things where I think if you have a certain type of water parameter, there's a part of you that wants the other water parameter so you can keep other types of fish really, really easily. And for us, because we have a high pH, we have harder water, it's like, I actually think that's far more limiting. It is far more limiting. I mean, you've got, okay, you can do goldfish, you can do all your live bearers, you can do African cichlids from the Great Lakes, and there's other things that everything you've seen in our fish room and in our gallery throughout the years has all been kept at the water parameters I've told you that we have. But there are so many fish that are optimized, and I think there's just so many more options when you're closer to a pH of 7, when your water hardness is a little bit lower. You can really have some cool fish thrive. Yeah. Whip, thank you. Yeah, 210 is nowhere big enough for a large or smallmouth bass. 100% agree. The biggest I would probably go are like the bluegill types or the yellow perch. And again, I personally wouldn't do the bluegill types. Yeah. And he says bluegill, other panfish are a good choice if you don't want to go with tiny fish. Yeah, because those fish are all, any fish is a predator. It's going to eat fish smaller than itself, as long as those fish can fit inside of their mouth. Noelle, you're absolutely right. My angelfish, tetras, Bolivian rams love my super soft water. All the rasboras I've tried hate it. Now that's interesting, because rasboras, I don't know if they would like super soft water, but they would probably do better in water that's softer than what we have. I know that with that 10 degrees GH and KH.
The aquarium crib asks, would you pick a dwarf pike or a pair of cribs with a bumble catfish planted tank?
I would not do a dwarf pike. I think even I don't want to misspeak, but I thought the dwarf pikes still get fairly sizable. Someone can put, and maybe you can put the size, but I thought the dwarf pikes are still a predatory fish that is still going to max out at like 6 inches unless I'm thinking of a different fish, maybe even a little bit larger, and they would probably eat everything else unless the dwarf pike is not the same dwarf pike that I have known in the past. While you're looking at, so what do we got here? Joanna's actually looking it up.
How big do dwarf pike cichlids get? 5 to 6 inches.
Yeah, those guys will destroy.
From one source.
Yeah, those guys will usually they're fairly predatorial too. Frida says, I have 6 male guppies. One is very aggressive and had to remove it. Would 12 be better to stop this? Just got home from work. Not sure if you've discussed it already. We haven't. Thank you for the question. It depends on the size of the tank. So you had 6. One was aggressive, had to remove it. Well, if the other 5 are doing okay, I don't know if I would change anything. Now, if we're talking about a 20-gallon and you added, would 12 be better? It's really hard to say. I mean, for the most part, when I keep guppies, I just keep them in a community tank. One thing I didn't mention is the optimal ratio, in my opinion, which I'm going to talk about in a second. But I've always kept males and females together, and then I've always had fish in the tank that will deal with fry, unless I wanted to actually breed them like I did with the Guppy party tank. I'm glad you asked that question, because I know the popular opinion is to do a male and 2 females, and I actually think that is still really tough on the females. When I am building a community of guppies, usually I like to have a male and at least 3 or 4 females, and that to me tends to spread out the male I don't know if it's aggression, but the male mating behaviors and how they want to chase the females around. It just tends to chill that out a little bit, and I think your female guppies will last a lot longer if they are not constantly being chased. So like a 1 to 4 for me is a lot better. Slamboy says, how many drops can a single female guppy have? Mine's on her 3rd. Yeah, 3 to 5 for sure. The aquarium kid says, look at the green dwarf like Orinoco. 4-inch tops. Many dwarf pikes are around 6. Sorry for not saying the species. Yeah, I still think those pike cichlids, man, even at 4 inches, they're going to eat anything that can fit into their mouth, and they like doing that. So just be really careful there. Scott B says, yeah, I do 1 male to 4 females. I think that's a really good ratio.
Jack, 1, 2, 3, 5. Try again. Can you can you keep guppies with betta or paradise fish? Oh, can they live with guppies, and are they okay with options?
So betta and paradise fish with guppies.
I think so.
I have done it, and I have been to fish rooms where I see it quite frequently, where someone has mixed a betta with guppies. We went to Creative Pet Keeping's fish room. She did it frequently. She was a betta breeder. Worked just fine. But that was a 20-gallon. And the betta that she had in that tank was a very active betta. And the other fish rooms I've been, it just seemed like the bettas were a little bit more active, and they did fine with the guppies. So I don't think it's much of a problem in a 20-gallon. There's a couple potential issues. 1, somebody could get aggressive and fin nippy. That could be your male guppies on the betta. That could be your betta towards the male guppies with those beautiful fins. 2, the biggest concern I have is more what's going to happen around feeding time, because bettas typically do not eat quickly, and guppies do. And so is the betta going to get enough food? I think you're going to have more luck doing that in a 20-gallon or larger, where the 10-gallon, the guppies don't necessarily have a lot of places to go and escape if the betta turns angry. And if for some reason you get a male guppy who's like, yeah, you know what, I think I can take this betta on, and starts fin nipping the betta, it's got nowhere to go either. So just be careful there, and also be a little bit aware of the personality of your betta. If it's a more active fish, it's probably going to work out better. I know that we've actually separated endlers and bettas, not because there was any aggression, but because the endlers were crazy, and guppies can be pretty active too. And the betta that we had just wasn't, and it was just like a stressful situation for the betta. So we separated them just because when you got crazy fish with some type of fish that is not, it can be a bad mix. Paradise fish, I don't know. I haven't kept paradise fish in forever. I think it's still one of those things we'd want to be a little bit careful where the paradise fish could potentially be a little bit aggressive. And Whip, that's a good point. Yeah, the pike cichlids have a big mouth in proportion to their body size. Absolutely. And that's why I think you got to be extra careful with them. Brian says, in my experience, female guppies are way more vicious. They can be. They are certainly bigger than the males are. And so if they want to put a whooping on a fish, they certainly can. What you got? You got something?
Not at the moment.
See how that works?
Pwah.
Thanks for Nano. Do you keep saltwater? We do not. Not that I'm against it.
Not
Just
at the
we
mall.
haven't had a chance to. I've never kept a saltwater tank, and I've said it a million times. If I ever did, I'd probably keep fish that are not meant for beginners. I'd want a bunch of saltwater gobies, which I find fascinating. I love seahorses, and I love jellyfish. And I would probably. I don't even know enough to know if that's like a bad thing to start with. You know how people are like, hey, I'm brand new to freshwater fish keeping. I'm going to go ahead and keep an Oscar, some peacock cichlids, and a doveye. And you're like, no, that's a...
In a 10-gallon.
Yeah, in a 10-gallon. That's a really bad idea. So I could have just done like that sort of thing on the saltwater side. And some of you saltwater people are like, I have no idea. Bonnie says, can guppies cohabitate with cribs? Maybe. Again, if you don't want babies, that's the big thing. If you don't want to see baby guppies, the cribs are most likely going to eat the baby guppies. I've actually kept that combination before, and I didn't have any issues with it. I did it in a 20-gallon where I had a group of cribs and some guppies, and they were fine. They were fine together. Again, but a crib is a cichlid, so you never know, especially if we're saying cribs, plural. If you get a pair of cribs and they start breeding, they will absolutely chase guppies away. And guppies are not smart, and they're not, especially the males, are not fast relative to the cribensis. So that could mean that your cribs put an absolute hurting on those guppies. So you have to be careful there. But as long as you don't have a breeding pair of cribs in that tank, and you don't care about fry from your guppies, there's a possibility it could work. I've done it, it has worked, but it doesn't work all the time.
Brian on the scene. Are her green neons okay for a 10-gallon, or is that too small of a tank? If so, would you suggest another similar fish for that size?
I think you could do it. I think you could do 6 to 8 in a 10-gallon pretty decently. I think the green neons out of the neon types are probably the smallest of them all.
And they generally poke around. They don't
Yeah.
have mad zoomies.
If you are looking for something that is similar-ish, I could also see green cubitai,
Yes.
and one we don't talk about enough because it sucks in our water, but those blue axelrodi.
Love those
Yeah,
fish.
the blue
they're
axelrodi
so pretty.
rasbora
Yeah.
it's kind of like a neon.
Smaller.
Not as deep red, smaller fish, gorgeous fish. The problem is I've tried to bring them in twice, and both times I brought them in, they looked great. It wasn't the fault of the importer or anything like that. They came in, they looked fantastic. I put them in a quarantine tank, and within that 4-week quarantine period, gone. Not a single one left. No evidence of disease. And the second time, I think I even was like, okay, you know what? Maybe I'm going to go ahead and throw some meds in here after a week when they started to die off. It didn't. Nothing worked. I just don't think they like our water parameters. But if you've got water that's not as hard as ours, with the pH not as high, green cubitai and the blue axelrodi rasbora, both really cool. Jamie, thank you for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Found 8 blue-eyed rainbow fry. Very cool. Fish I got from you at Aquashella.
What?
I got grand fish. Is that what you're telling me?
Aww.
Nice.
So
Scoop
proud.
them into small container hanging inside the tank. Perfect. Fed Aquarium Co-op Easy Fry. And Rapashi powder. Love that. That's a great combination. Total noob. How should I proceed? You're doing perfect. Don't
Good
change
job.
anything. You've got the inside. So the nice thing about that container that you've got hanging on the inside of the tank is it's probably like one of those wire mesh ones, I'm assuming. And then so the tank water is basically, as long as you're doing water changes in the tank and all that stuff and keeping nitrates low there, the water inside the inside hanging breeder box is fine. The foods, if they're eating them, perfect. And you pretty much can't find smaller foods. So obviously we've got the Northfin Fry Starter. The Rapashi is a very fine powder, as is the Aquarium Co-op Easy Fry. So you're doing great. That's awesome. I'm glad to see that they are breeding for you.
BBs.
Yep. Really cool. All right, so let me see here. I saw that. All right, so my chat thing is still kind of stuck.
Oink Master says, this is hilarious. I opened up the Amazonas, and what page did I open to? The Chaka Chaka catfish. I guess they all appear kind of grouchy like Chuck.
Yeah.
Yes, they do.
Yeah, so Chuck was our Chaka Chaka cat. Now that's a fish where if you've got guppies that are don't put that fish in your guppy tank because it's going to eat them all.
Yeah.
But if you had a Chaka Chaka cat, let's say at a 20 gallon with some sand, first of all, you'll hardly ever see it because it will burrow in sand. It has a mouth. The fish only gets to be about 5 or 6 inches long.
Yeah.
But it's wide. It's a couple inches wide, and the mouth is just as wide as the rest of its head. And we would get into situations where there was some fish in our fish room that were breeding too much, and I would just take a big old net, scoop. Didn't matter if those fish were adults or babies, throw them in there, and within about 5 or 6 days, the catfish had been like, thank you for the meal. I didn't actually buy that fish. Luke brought it home when he was working for a fish wholesaler. And I was like, hey, I found this thing. It's really cool. And then, of course, after the fact, I'm like, dude, this thing only eats live fish. And sure enough, it would not get on any prepared food. So luckily, we had a solution. But eventually, we rehomed that fish. K-Dog has it now, I believe. And it's still doing good. Those fish can live a long time, too, but not active. That's the least active fish probably on the planet because, at least freshwater.
Oh, yeah.
That fish really doesn't care. It doesn't move. You can scoop it with a net. And don't do this because it actually releases some poison. I don't think it's necessarily dangerous to human. It could be irritating. But, I mean, if you put your hand in there and, like, try to... there were times where we'd be gravel vacuuming that tank and I'd have to, like, shoo it away because wherever it wasn't going to move when the gravel vac was coming towards it. So I never actually saw that fish move.
You're lucky.
It would.
You're lucky he didn't eat you.
I was actually, I was a little concerned about that. You know, like what happens if a 6-inch fish eats a grown man? Yeah, that could be a dangerous thing. Now that's going to be
would be awful. That'd be a bad day.
Yeah. All right.
Here, I got from JD, I got the last 7 chili raspbora from my local fish store and put them in my 8-gallon tall shrimp tank on my desk. Cool. I love them. Bougie's also sending me some guppies from her snakeskin males.
Ooh, cool. Nice. Very nice. Only we says, when are you going to review the Marina Slim S20 hang-on back filter? It's a Hagen filter with a pump in the aquarium that's been around for years. Whenever. So the problem is I don't actually have a lot of tanks that really require a hang-on back filter. So it'd be something I would have to look at, bring it in, and then the issue that I have right now, believe it or not, is most of my aquariums that have a hang-on back are all long-term review type stuff. So once I run out of tanks where I'm like, oh, okay, I can throw another hang-on back on there because a lot of them have 3D backgrounds or there's something else going on in there. So as soon as one of my other hang-on backs are through their long-term evaluation, I might have some space. Okay.
Oh, and Kat says, I've got 4 axelrodi in a bookshelf tank on my work desk.
Nice.
Love watching them. But they are the survivors of the dozen I bought. I've got very hard water, too.
Yeah.
Oh,
well, I'm glad
you're lucky you have 4.
Yeah. I'm glad that they
Lucky.
survived because they are really cool fish.
I love them. They're so cute.
It says, I had an odd random combo that started working well. Peacock gudgeons, diamond tetras, and a single male crebensis as a centerpiece. Yeah, I could see that working. Because crebensis are not overly aggressive, especially if it's just a single male. They actually just kind of mind their own business, roam around the tank, look for food in the sand. Peacock gudgeons don't bother anybody. Diamond tetras are assertive when they need to be, so no, I mean, they're not going to get picked on or anything. But yeah, that's cool.
Brian asks, what do you call a baby fish from Paris? A French fry.
Oh, what?
I love that. I have to
like
remember
it.
that.
Yep.
That's an awesome joke.
Yep. I never kept cribs, but they look like your typical cichlids. I never have even thought about pairing them with guppies. Yeah, you got to be careful. But cribs are super underrated. At least in our area, they're not expensive at all because generally speaking, what happens when cribs breed is they produce a lot, and I mean a lot of fry. I know, like the GCCA, we had a Wonderful tank, 75-gallon Crebensis tank, and it had some angelfish in there and some other, like a gourami, a red-tailed shark, or a rainbow shark. This was way back in the day, way before YouTube. And we went to the GCCA, and they had like 11 cribs in a bag. It was a BAP, Breeder Awards points thing, where someone had bred cribs, they wanted their breeding points, and then to get their points, they have to bring in fry. So they scooped out 11, maybe 1-inch fish, not even 3/4 of an inch. I mean, they were tiny. And everybody's like, all right, here we go. Here's the Crebensis. And they start them out $5, no bids, $4, no bids. Finally, they get down to $1. And this is when Luke was small. And he's like, Dad, can we get him? I'm like, raise your hand. So he raises his hand, gets these 11 fish for $1. We put them in a quarantine tank and then threw them in the 75-gallon when they were maybe just over 1 inch. As they started to get larger, man, they are so pretty. The females get this really super purple belly. The males get purple and like a red and a yellow color, and their fins look amazing. And we actually had in that batch, if I remember correctly, we had most of them were standard Crebensis, but some of them were albino, which are also really pretty. It was quite the tank with 11 of those things in a 75-gallon, and they lived in that tank together for a long time. They did breed, but the fry never survived because it was all the other fish in there were like, yeah, thanks for the food.
Shrimply Liv is popping in for a moment, sending love from the Flip fam.
Well, what's going on?
Hi, Liv, if you're still here.
How's things? Because it says, I can't keep Epistos alive. It's been the only dwarf cichlid I struggle with over years. Keep Tangnikins, cribs, rams, other small South Americans, no problem. What gives? I'm the same way. So what happens for me with the Crebensis, there are two that I have good luck with. One is I haven't found it since I had it. And the other, I usually bring them in. So the first one, and I did a species profile on this fish many years ago, Apistogramma mendezi. And I was told when I got those fish from the GCCA for a BAP auction, hey, keep them on soft water and a low pH. And I didn't do that. I just kept them in our Chicago water, and they lived for years and years. And I moved them from one tank to another, and they finally just kind of died out after a number of years of having them. The other one, and I bring this fish in a lot, is Apistogramma panduro. And I think that of all the Apistos, that is the one that does the best when you have harder water with a higher pH. The Panduros are amazing. The males get this really pretty blue color. Females get a really intense yellow with a black stripe down the side of their face. I love bringing those fish in. Probably for those of you who are local, again, do the swaps. Maybe October, November, I'll have another batch of those in because people, when they see them, they typically sell out pretty fast. But like the Cockatoides, they all do the same thing. So for me, Cockatoides, Borellii especially, Agassizii, I bring them in. They look fine. Within probably 4 weeks, they're breeding. I've got fry. The fry eventually die, and then the parents die within 2 weeks after that.
That's
and it
awful.
happens like clockwork every time. And so I don't bring any of those in anymore because they just don't like the water. They don't like my harder water.
Or they
with a
don't
higher
like
pH.
you.
Or they don't like me, yeah.
Whip has shared some news from K-Dog.
Okay, let's hear it.
Chuck is no longer with us.
Chuck passed away? That's
Apparently.
sad.
Give
Aw,
our regards
Chuck.
to K-Dog.
Yeah, that's too bad about Chuck.
Poor
Chuck
Chuck.
was a great fish, but I wonder how old Chuck was, though, because Chuck was
know.
almost full grown when I
Yeah.
had him, so it might not have been anything that K-Dog did. It's probably...
Yeah, he's just,
I had Chuck
he was
for
old
a
man
while,
Chuck.
and then K-Dog had him for a while, too, so
Yeah.
could have just been getting old. Shamu Aquatics, really appreciate you being a prime timer the last 7 months. If I got guppies, my Bosemani rainbows, Congo tetras, and big super school of roseline sharks would be like buffet time whenever the guppies breed. 100%. Yeah, those fish are all going to absolutely enjoy the little baby guppy snacks for sure. Vibes, thank you so much for the little bitty Vibes thing. Appreciate it. I think we are at a point where we should definitely do the giveaway. What do you guys think? I mean, we're at that point where it's usually about giveaway time. Let me go ahead, and we got to bring up our 5,000 screens to make sure this all goes well. This is going to take a second here to have this thing all populate the way it's supposed to. So let me explain what we have going on here. today's giveaway is by what?
Regina thought Chuck was a human. No, Regina
Oh my
is
gosh, no, Chuck was a
is
fish.
a fish.
Chuck was a chaka cat. Yeah, we should probably
would
explain
eat other
that.
fish. So
Yeah.
I'm kind of split if
Yeah,
I'm sad
that
or
would
happy.
be really messed up if we were talking about a human. Yeah, well, you know, we got Chuck. He was pretty old, and then, you know, we had him for a couple years, passed him off onto somebody else, and you know, also Chuck's probably just an old. Chuck was just old.
He was old.
No, Chuck was a chaka cat. Okay, so thank you, Noel. 44 months. You are definitely one of the old school people. Yeah, go to all messages in your live chat thing that will make things better. Even still, your chat, what you're probably seeing is going to prioritize your own posts. So just be aware of that. So I mentioned this the last couple weeks that we had a giveaway that we wanted to do, and one of our channel sponsors is Fritz Aquatics, fritzaquatics.com if you want to see their cool stuff. This is what we're going to be doing tonight. This is the freshwater or saltwater master test kit. I love this packaging. It's pretty darn cool.
It's very pretty.
And in the master test kit, you have a wide range pH, ammonia, nitrite, and nitrate tests. It is a liquid test kit, and so most of you who use test kits for your water probably know that the liquid test kits tend to be a little bit more reliable than the little test strips are. I did a review on this. I forgot to post it in the description, I think. So if you want to see what this is all about, check out the review that I did a couple months ago. This is a great test kit. They've made some changes. They've made some, well, not changes, it's a new test kit, but they made some improvements out of the gate, I would say, to your typical liquid test kit. One is this wide range pH. So a lot of the other liquid test kits, you've got a low range and a high range. And then if you are inevitably falling in the middle, you're trying to run both pH tests to figure out what the pH of your water is. And then like the numbers never quite match up, or the colors. This is a wide range. And so it's going to cover you no matter what your pH is. Love that. The directions and the color charts are much, much easier to read and to use for this Fritz Master Test Kit. And so that to me is a big plus, especially as for those of you who, you know, maybe have to switch to these guys every once in a while to read things. Side note, I was at the store today. I was trying to look at ingredients for some of the foods I was buying. It was game over, man. I had no clue. I'm like, I'm just going to buy this stuff. So looking at the ingredients list was nearly impossible. So anyway, this is a great test kit. Again, Fritz Aquatics, if you want to learn more, flipaquatics.com. They are another channel sponsor. If you want to check this out, add one to your fish room. For us, testing water, I don't do it all the time. All right, so I'm not telling you, oh, you've got to test your water every week or you're a bad fish keeper. No, I don't do that. Once my tank is stable, I don't test it all that often unless I've got maybe more fish going in, or maybe there's some kind of an issue where you're like, man, something seems a little bit off, let me test the water. So, and these are the major tests. The nice thing is you've got the ammonia here, which is usually like your number one thing. We're like, oh, something's wrong. So you got your ammonia, you got your nitrite, you got your nitrate. Those are the big ones, right? Along with your pH. So it's covering the most important ones that you're going to have. So that's this. Now, to win said giveaway, there's a couple things you're going to have to do, and don't start doing it yet because I have not typed in the magic word into the chat yet. And I'm only looking at answers after my magic word that I type in. So 2 things. Don't do this yet. You're going to be typing in a number between 10 and 20. And along with that, you have to tell me which fish came out on top on Sunday's video. Now you can go. So, which fish did I select as the best fish in Sunday's video? And what is the number that we have, that Joanna has right there, hanging out? Did we get it already? Yep. Wait, hold on. Hold on. No, not yet.
Yes.
Yeah, we're done. Okay, we're good. You can stop the whole typing now. All right, hold on. Now let's check all of our situations here.
Discount double check.
Yep, we got to make sure that I'm so proud of so many of you because you are picking at least fish
that you did it on.
Wait a minute. Is this it right here?
Wait, where is your...
Right here.
Yes, as far as I know, but I'm doing a double check here.
Do we have a second one? Hold on. I want to see something.
Okay.
Hold on. I just want to see if we got... Oh, crap. This thing just jumped on me now. Gosh darn it. Hold on. I know it's exciting times, but do you see... Here's what I'm going to do.
Looking for a second one.
I'm going to do, because I'm making this up as I go. I
Okay.
want to do the real answer, and then I want to do, it was almost the right answer. So right number, but the
Okay.
other fish. Can we do
Okay.
that? I want to do 2 winners tonight. I'm allowed,
Wow.
right? I'm allowed in my giveaways to do 2 winners.
Sure.
And so
That's fun.
it's going to
I
be
gotta
the first
find that,
person who got this number along with the right answer, which is the chili rasbora. But I'm also going to do the person who got the right number, but the wrong answer, which was the CPD. So we're actually going to reward the wrong answer too. Now, here's what I got for this, the second
Yes.
winner. Okay. So go ahead, show the number. The number was 12. And
12.
Kat, you had 12, but the CPD. So right number, wrong fish. But that's okay, because tonight we're going to give away 2 of these things.
They're both cool fish.
Right? And Michelle, and the reason I want to do this, because Michelle Prang, you won with 12 and the chili. And Michelle, I know you just recently won, which is fine.
Yeah.
I mean, you're here. You're playing the game. You deserve to have your shot just like everybody else. So, got 2 winners. Michelle Prang, you have won one of these bad boys because you said 12 and chilies. But Kat, you also won because you said 12 and CPD really early on. So, Kat, we need your mailing information. So what you need to do is go to Prime Time Giveaway,
Singular.
Prime Time Giveaway, all one thing, at yahoo.com, and give us your mailing address and all that stuff, and we will ship one of these to you as well. And that way we have 2 winners tonight. So just wanted to do that because I felt like it. I'm allowed to give away more than one.
More stuff.
And don't you worry, if you didn't win, hey, it's cool because we're going to do more of these things. We've got a whole bunch of stuff that we want to be giving away from now until the end of the year especially. So, yeah, very cool. Nice job, everybody. Kat says, I typed chili raspberry originally, then double doubted myself when everyone else was typing
Oh, no.
CPD. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah, I hear you.
there you go.
You know, it was the pressure of people just saying stuff. So
Plus, how do you really pick between the chili and the
it's
CPD?
hard. I mean, in the video, I had specific criteria that I was looking at,
I know.
and it really just came down to versatility.
I know.
You know,
The
but
magic word of
what would you
versatility.
pick? Do you agree or disagree?
I
You have to pick one. No, you
literally-
can't cop out. You cannot cop out. And I want to hear from everybody here. If you had to pick a raspberry, and don't give me this stuff, I wouldn't pick a raspberry. No. If you had to pick one of the 2, you have a tank. Somebody is telling you, you must put one of these 2 fish in said tank. Which one are you choosing?
That's really tough. I think I'd have to, by like a hair, choose the chilies because they're out a little bit more, and they're just like friendlier to me.
Okay.
I have a lot of best friend chilies.
Yeah. And
That's
again,
tough though.
To me,
it's
yeah.
really tough because they would look really awesome
To
together.
say that I picked the chilies over the Galaxy or the CPD, my gosh, I mean, you're
Right.
splitting hairs at that point because they are
You
both
are.
ridiculously cool fish. I mean, oh my gosh, you can't go wrong with either one. And in fact, do both. And the 14-gallon that I showed in that tank, or in that video, had both. They had the chili. I don't know if you noticed, but they had the chilies. They had the CPDs. They had green kubatai. And I think there was something else in that tank. I don't remember what else you had in that tank when you set it up. Was there one more fish, or was that it?
Chilies, green kubatai.
CPDs.
Um,
I thought there was another one in that tank at the time. But anyway, you can't go wrong with both. They're small. You got a
was
10-gallon, you're good.
pygmy quarries. I had pygmy quarries.
You did have pygmy quarries in that tank. Yeah.
Little
maybe that was the other
rock
one.
dwellers.
Yeah.
Wait. Whip says, maybe I missed the video. Is that even possible? I seriously don't remember this topic at all. Better brush up, Whip.
You know, especially with your your desire to keep nano fish in those
Yeah,
tanks.
Whip,
I'm surprised
come on.
you forgot
You're
about
like
that
all
one.
over nano
Yeah.
fish. Come on now.
Because it says added a trio of pearl grammies to the centerpiece of my 40 breeder. Sweet. That is a very good choice. Jamie, emerald dwarf raspboras, also a great fish. Like the CPDs, only they've got stripes instead of
So
spots.
I like them both together, stripes and spots.
In the fish room right now, we've got all three. We have the chilies, we have the
magical
galaxy raspboras, and we have the emerald dwarfs. Just, kind of, I guess we're kind of throwing out a preview of some of the fish we have for the swaps this month. We have all three.
All we need are some sparkling gouramis, and I would be super happy.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Ooh, shine on. Yeah, the brilliant green raspbora is one of my favorites. I
He
don't bring
loves
them in that much because people, for whatever reason, don't appreciate them the way I do. But
Like
they are
silver
one
tips.
of the hardiest rasboras, and they're really, really pretty with that green, and then got a little bit of the red by the tail. So if you haven't looked up the brilliant green raspbora, we did a species profile on them, and I thought they were absolutely showing their best lives in that video that we did. Brilliant green raspbora was looking sweet.
So, Whip's continuing to smack talk here. Chili all day, every day, and twice on Sundays. CPDs just don't do anything for me, and I'll say it to your face.
Wow. Okay.
Very strong
those-
opinions, but like we said, he's just
Yep.
like Nanofish is like his middle name.
Yeah.
Whip Nanofish.
You could
world.
fire back with something like arowanas are stupid.
All
you
big
know?
fish are stupid. Whip.
Wow. You might have just offended all kinds of people.
Big fish and big tanks.
What?
Just kidding.
Man, that
I'm
was
just kidding.
That
'Cause
was
you know what?
really
Because you know what? Who wouldn't love a bigger, like a huge tank other than me? Because it would fit more of my beloved fish in there.
sure.
Any
That's what it
fish.
says I got sparkling gouramis today. Very cool.
Oh,
They're really when I did
lucky.
the
Tell 'em I said hi.
I was lucky enough when I did the species profile on the sparkling gourami, I had video. It was that particular part of the video quality is not the best because
No.
I walked down, they're in a quarantine tank and they're breeding. And I caught the whole thing where the
Yeah.
male was wrapped around the female would release an egg, the male would grab it and then put it up in the bubble nest, grab it, put it up in the bubble nest. And I was like, oh wow, I'm getting this on video. So that made for a really cool part of that species profile.
I've gotten the coolest stuff. Just happen to have my phone with the coolest stuff on video. If I had only accurately pressed the record button.
You say that.
I cannot.
I
tell
was,
you.
where the heck was I? Oh, I was doing recording of your tank upstairs.
Okay.
And I'm sitting there and I'm like, all right, I'm going to do some of this. I'm going to turn it this way. And I'm like, this is great. I'm getting the best footage ever. I was like a moron. I'm standing there for like 3 or 4 minutes straight. And I look down at the phone. I'm like,
Not recording.
I have to press the button. And I didn't get the same footage that I wanted.
Sorry. That's heartbreaking.
Well, this is a good one. Corrine says, Joanna, you have mentioned the lamp eye emerald eye rasboras in one of your tanks. Do you still have them? What did you think of them? I want them for my next nano tank, but there isn't much info on them.
The lamp eyes are beautiful. I do
Yep.
not currently have them. I had them in the 11-gallon bookshelf tank. They were very beautiful. They're an underrated fish, I think, and frequently we forget to throw them out there and be like,
Yeah, we
hey,
do.
don't forget about them. They're beautiful, and I would love to keep them again.
I have a nice amount of B-roll for the lamp eye slash, what's the other name for him? Lamp
Emerald eye?
Emerald eye. I have a nice amount of B-roll that I have that in the queue as a species profile because I believe it was Grant and Shelby, Garden of Eder, who did an aquascape and said, hey, what do you want me to put in? I'm like, throw some of those lamp eyes in there, and they did. Great looking tank, great looking fish. They were
That's
hard to
fun.
film because they're so small, but at some point I will put out that species profile because it's really cool. It was a really cool fish. Not as common, but they're silver and they have a little bit of black to them, especially around their tail, but those ridiculous blue eyes are insane. Grow more veggies. Thank you so much for the super chat. Is the Title 35 going to provide enough surface agitation for sailfin mollies and a 48 by 12 by 12? Should I run an airstone as well? Thank you. No, it's probably not. So the 48 by 12 by 12 is a 30 long. And, well, I shouldn't say that. Yes, if you ran 2 of them. The only thing I'm not sure of is if the Tidal 35, here's what I would do. If you're looking at that filter, it is a short enough tank where the Tidal 35 is appropriate, but not if you're just running one. I would run 2 of them, 1 on each end, and that could be a nice setup. But I would highly recommend buy 1 of them. Make sure that the Tidal 35 will actually fit over the rim of that 30 long, or 33 long, sorry. Because if it doesn't, now you're messed up. And it's like, okay, now what do I do? Because it's frustrating for a lot of us. I know for some of you, you've bought these filters and maybe you're like, I'm going to buy a smaller hang-on back. I'm going to double up, 1 on each side, especially if you got a 4-foot tank like you do, only to find out when you bring these filters home, they're sticking up like 5 feet off the top of the tank because they won't sit all the way down on the rim. So you could buy 1, check it. If it works, it really would be a nice setup. And if you do 2 of them, you don't need air stones or anything like that. You'll have plenty of surface agitation, plenty of water movement. The Tidal 35 doesn't have an intake tube. I really wish it did, but because you only have a 12-inch tall tank, it's really made for that. Yeah.
Shamu Aquatics says, what's everyone's idea of small, medium, large fish? For me, small equals 7 inches or smaller, medium 8 to 12, large 12 to 18, and giant 2 feet or larger. Mine would be very different.
Yeah, so would mine, but yours is not wrong.
No, I think everybody, whoever, like whatever you
that's
keep.
That's a good question. I would love to hear everybody else's opinion. What is small, medium, and large for you? I would say small for us would be under 2 inches.
That's exactly what I was going to say. I was going to say small is anything like 1 to 2 inches. Anything under 1 would be like tiny. And then anything like 0 to 0.5 would be the best.
And then I would say,
tinies.
so I would say, yeah, 2 inches or less, small. 2 to 4 inches would probably be medium. And as we get to 4 inches, for a lot of the standard aquariums would be on the larger side. Obviously, I mean, I've kept large fish, and like the Oscars, the Midas cichlids. We had our biggest fish was Timmy, our Nile tilapia, a full 18.5 inches, tall bodied, beautiful, absolutely gorgeous fish. I miss that fish. Of all the fish I've had, the Geophagus altifrons is probably number 1 that I miss.
Yes.
But man, Timmy or Chaz, our tilapia or the Oscar would go 2, 3, and probably, man, I don't know. Timmy might be number 2, and personality-wise, Timmy was number 1. Like Timmy was my overall in terms of fish that you could absolutely interact with. Timmy was definitely my favorite.
Ruby had my heart.
Oh, Ruby was great too. She was our female Midas cichlid. Roger and Ruby was a pair. They had a bunch of babies. Roger died shortly after that, and yeah, Ruby was around for a long time.
All right, so when we had the 150 and back in the day, you had 2 like king of the tanks. One was a good king, one was a bad king.
The Lethrinops intermedius was the good king. Yes. He was a really gorgeous. Yeah, I
remember him.
Too.
I remember when we lost him.
Lethrinops intermedius was a fish where when we first bought him, he was a tan fish. It took forever for him to color up, but once he did, he got pretty darn large, and he ruled that tank as a cichlid tank, African cichlid tank. And then he started getting old, and the Red Empress became the ruler, and he was a little bit more ruthless, but. Yeah, those were cool fish. But yeah, the Lethrinops was also one that I missed quite a bit. Check. 1, 2, 3, 5. Predatory Aquatics sponge filters. Can you put an air stone? Is it better than without one? Depends on what your goals are. Okay, so when I first set up all the tanks in the fish room, I had air stones in every single sponge filter. And the advantage, and I used to never clog air stones, not the ones the cheap ones you buy from Petco or PetSmart, because they start to clog up and they create too much back pressure for your pump, and that can just be a real mess. And so I used to never clogs. Those are ones you can adjust. I like that, and so the advantage there was the bubbles were smaller, and so you didn't have the bubbling noise as much. It was just a little bit more relaxed. The problem I had with the air stones is to do that in the sponge filters that I had, which were all the ATI hydros. I love those sponge filters. What you had to do is you had like the inlet, right? So you had the hose that went into the sponge filter, and then underneath that, you had another hose that was about this long, depending on the size of the sponge filter, and then you'd have the air stone that would be in the center of the sponge filter itself. That worked out great for a year to a year and a half. And then what starts happening is that little piece of hose that holds the sponge filter to the underside of the inlet, it starts to dry rot like all hose does. And then the air stone would start falling out. That became a major pain. And so as those things started falling out, we replace them, and they dry up again, even though they're in water, dry rot kind of sort of thing, get hard and brittle, fall out. I'm like, you know what? As these things fall out, I'm taking them all out. I'm not dealing with this anymore. And so now in our fish room, I don't think we run a single air stone inside of our sponge filters, not because I don't think that there are advantages. There are. It's just I don't want to deal with having to constantly replace with, even now with 37 tanks on the fish room side over there. I don't want to deal, and most of those tanks have more than one sponge filter. I'm not dealing with that. I'm not dealing with constantly having to change that little hose piece out so that it still runs. Ugh, frustrating.
Frustrating.
Oink, thank you for being a prime timer the last 35
Oink.
months. Have you ever had to treat epistaxis in your tanks? Epistaxis. Information about this disease seems to be a bit obscure and could easily be mistaken as ick. Yeah, and the thing is, the treatments aren't all that different. So I generally use the same meds as I do for ick. The only thing is I don't really mess with the temperatures as much, and pretty much have similar results. So if I see spots, I'm usually either throwing in the Copper Safe or the Ick X, and then if the spots don't look like ick, they're not as, gosh, how do I say it? Usually with ick spots, they're very uniform, and it really does look like tiny pieces of salt. Where the disease you're talking about, the spots are not quite as circular, as almost as white, and they're not as uniform on the fish. So that's usually how I tell them apart. That's a good one. Cat Buzz says, how much work goes into a high-tech freshwater setup? What do you think so many fish keepers stay away from saltwater still? Well, for the first part, high-tech freshwater to me means that you've got a ton of high-light plants, because there really isn't.
And CO2.
Yes, and CO2. Yeah, so that's high-tech to me. High-tech means that you're running a tank like one of the ones that we have behind us. You're using a really nice light. You're using a really nice canister filter. You're planting that tank with some highlight plants, and you're really creating that underwater forest look. And to do that, you've got to have CO2, and you really have to balance your micronutrients for your plants very, very well. I do think that there are quite a few people who do that. I think that if you search for that, if you search for aquascaping channels on YouTube, you're going to find those people who do that. MD Tanks comes to mind, trying to think of who else. George Farmer comes to mind. So these people who are really, they do a great job. Senski's come to mind. As far as saltwater, why do people stay away from saltwater? I don't know why most people do. I can tell you why we do, and that is, one, managing this many aquariums, even if it's 45 like we have now, is doable, right? Even if I didn't have my boys who maintain all these tanks. If I had all these tanks here, I still feel like this is something that is, would I want to do it? No. Is it manageable? Yes. I could still do it. I could knock out all 40-something tanks. Give me 7 hours, and I'm good, right? Broken up probably in a couple parts of the week. The other thing, too, with freshwater, keep in mind, is even if you are doing this many tanks, you could cut out a ton of work by just doing auto water change and having your tanks plumbed in. That's not as easy to do with saltwater, and to the best of my knowledge, it's not something that people generally do, where they've got, hey, I've just got a constant drip of fresh water with some overflows, so all my tanks are getting a, 50% turnover every single week, maybe more, depending on what you have in the tank, maybe less. The filtration is really easy to manage in a freshwater tank, especially if you go with a sump. You could run 10 tanks on one sump if you wanted to. For saltwater, everything's more expensive. Your filtration is more expensive. Your lighting's more expensive. The fish, the corals, all that stuff is way more money, more time consuming. Not impossible, but it's just more time consuming. So I think that's why we stay away from the saltwater, because with all these tanks, I don't have time necessarily to mess with the saltwater. Not that I don't want to. I do, but just not right now. Vibes is here. What's up? Noel says, had to switch to lurk mode, blowing up balloons and gathering supplies for the daughter-in-law's birthday surprise. Not a surprise anymore because she's watching the live stream. I don't know if you know that or not, but yeah,
You're probably pretty
secretly into fish and now watching it. And she's like, oh my gosh, you're making balloons? This is great.
Ooh,
Yeah.
fun. I love balloons.
Wang says, how do I break it to my nearite who's currently climbing out of the water? My snail child, this ain't Halloween, and that duckweed is not a legit costume. You know what? It's a nearite. Just let him think
Poke.
that, you know. It's camouflage. If you're going to get out of the tank, you need camouflage. And the only if they looked around, it's like, hey, if I cover myself in duckweed, you won't find me.
Not here.
Yep. Sneaky. Snails are so cool. I don't know how many of you keep snails or are just like, oh, snails are boring. They're not. I'm telling you. Mystery snails, nearite snails, they do some dumb stuff. Like, I am convinced that in their tiny little brain, and for those who have kept snails, you know this, they will go all the way up to the tank, and then they'll let go, and they'll all the way down. And they'll just keep doing that. And I know the way down for them is fun. Do you know what I saw an amano shrimp doing in your tank the other day?
What?
And I thought at first, like, oh, this was just a one-time thing. This shrimp did it like 5 times in a row. And it was funny as all heck.
Wonder if I've
There
seen
was a stem in one of your tanks, one of your plants, and it was dead. Just this little piece of a stem.
Okay.
The amano shrimp would climb up, get to the end of that dead little piece. That piece would fall down and then like halfway into the tank, and then he would fall to the ground, go right back up and do it again. He did that like 4 or 5 times in a row. You
So
can't
cute.
tell me that wasn't on purpose.
It's fun.
Yeah, it was like a diving board for him. Yep. So
Shrimps like to have fun
shrimp,
too.
snails. And did you also know, I thought that our bamboo shrimp in the Blue Dream breeding tank were all gone because they are old.
No.
There's still 2 of them in there. Those things that I did not realize they live as long as they live, because that was an aqua shell. We got those from Flip Aquatics pre-COVID. So that was 2018 or 2019. Those things are still alive. They don't breed, so it's the same
They're
ones.
crazy.
Just sitting there by the water flow going, okay, let me go ahead and get all the stuff out of the water. The Zen says, that's the equivalent of shrimp zoomies. Yeah, I think you're right. It is shrimp zoomies.
Aww.
I don't know what's up with our dogs lately, but every time you take them out, they get the late night zoomies. I'm sitting there
yeah.
often when you take them out. I'm on the couch. They have no regard for human beings. It's not Rocky. Rocky, our big American bulldog, he does. Your
Kind
dog,
of.
which is probably a mix of an English bulldog and a Boston Terrier, she comes back in and she's like, it's time to roll. And she is going like full speed, bouncing off the walls.
Run into a door.
She'll run
and
into
then
like
turn
her
around.
cage, make all kinds of ruckus. But when she's running around like the center part of our living room,
Ottoman.
or the ottoman where we have like an area rug, she's going full speed. She will knock into my legs, knock my legs off the ottoman, and like just really abuse me as a human being.
She's kind of like a
Yeah.
dump truck or something. She's crazy.
Yep. It's just insane. Jack, great question. What fish invertebrates that will handle a pH of 8.1 to 8.5? Mystery snails. I've had mystery snails at an 8 to 8.2, so our pH goes about as high as an 8.2. Nearite snails have been fine. Neocaridina shrimp have worked out just fine in our pH. So, and harder water. So those are the ones that I have kept successfully in our fish room. I haven't gone to an 8.5 though, so if you go that high, I'm not saying for sure that all those are going to be like, yeah, this is perfectly fine. But I do know up to an 8.2 they work. Pets Corner, my Amano's playing the bubbles. Yep, I know that. Where'd it go? Tank Girl says, I can't remember who said it. It's parasnailing. I don't know who said that either, but I would agree. That's exactly what it is.
For sure.
We've got shrimp zoomies and parasnailing. Love it.
Jamie Fillmore says, I think maybe he was talking to somebody, but this is good to know. I haven't yet seen a fluval stratum short, but I did a 15-gallon tank with it and kind of regretted it, not just because it's hard to plant. It certainly is when you use that. But it also dropped my pH from 7.2 to under 6.
Ouch. Yeah, that can happen with the planted substrates, especially if your water is on the softer side. So if you have a low KH, low carbonate hardness, and you put that in your tank. And it's not just the fluval stratum, it's a lot of the planted substrates. They will sometimes lower the pH a little bit. I agree that it is somewhat hard to plant because it's light. And more importantly, if you just use that and nothing else, it is nearly impossible to do any kind of a gravel vac to it because, and you're going to get fish detritus and waste and stuff. Like I said, I mentioned this a couple weeks ago. My huge mistake was when we took over your Nano Nook, when we had that back in the day, and started using most of those tanks for quarantine. I wasn't thinking, and I threw in. I don't remember what the first thing is I threw in there. It was probably rainbow fish, like a bunch of Bosemani or red rainbows, and I threw them in that 20 gallon for quarantine. And all it had was the fluval stratum, no sand cap, and they of course made a decent amount of waste. And it was nearly impossible to get that waste out of there because even when you did the gravel vac swirl like you do with sand, it was starting to suck up the stupid fluval stratum. Not stupid. It's a good substrate, but you have to cap it with sand. That's the best way to do it. If
Makes
you
it
just
easier,
use it on
yeah.
its own, you could run into problems. Yeah, JD says, I have fluval stratum in all 3 of my tanks mixed with gravel in the 8-gallon tanks and the back half of a 10-gallon. Yes, if you've got another type of substrate in there, it works. It works. I mean, it's good stuff. It's just if you use it on its own, that's when you can have issues. Peter says, my mystery snail's head got caught in the intake of a pump. Thank goodness he was able to get out once I shut it off. Yeah, that's very common. Probably the number one filter where that happens is I found the AquaClears, the old AquaClears, not the newer ones, because the intake's a little bit different. And it's not a knock on the AquaClear filter. It's just snails, especially the mystery snails, when they're climbing along that intake tube, their foot, which is the body part of the snail, gets caught in those slats for the intakes. It doesn't happen with like the marine land, especially the pros, because there's such a tiny area for them to actually get stuck into. Same thing with the Seachem tidal line, that is much less likely to happen. So if you are running the AquaClears especially, put an intake sponge on there, problem solved. You won't have that issue. You won't have issues with shrimp or anything else getting sucked up from the intake as well.
From Blasted 95. Yo, what's up, guys? My electric blue Acaras just laid eggs in a 125 with 1 juvenile Standachneri, a red spot severum, 2 Tapajos, and 5 angels. I want to spawn them. Should I pull the eggs or the parents?
Pull the eggs, because all those other fish are going to eat the fry. Not eventually, not initially. So electric blue Acaras, so there's 2 things. If they've never bred before, it usually takes them a couple times to be good parents. So a lot of times the parents themselves will either abandon the fry or eat the fry. So that can happen. Even if they are good parents, those other fish will absolutely find a way to consume the fry at some point. Even if they're just picking off, each one of them is picking off a couple every day. Eventually, after about a month, you're going to be like, oh, they're all gone. So if you want to actually spawn those, if you've still got the eggs, remove the eggs, put them in an egg tumbler, and then once they hatch and you see like, oh, look at that, they've got their little egg sacs, you could throw them in a small tank like a 10-gallon, feed them live baby brine after the egg sac goes away, and that's the way that you're going to be able to keep them around. But if you leave them in that tank, the fry in that tank with all those other fish, they are absolutely going to go missing. The other thing is be careful what you wish for with the electric blue Acara. If you are in a market where there is a lot of demand for them and your local fish stores will take them, maybe you've got swaps or maybe you ship fish, then there's an opportunity to move those. But if you are in a small market, it's really easy to saturate that market with electric blue Acara fry. That's happened in our market. I remember, my gosh, 5, 6, 7 years ago, they were still barely in demand. I mean, when people bred them, they were still going for decent money even at the club swaps. Nowadays, people were bringing them to like just the regular swaps, and they were having a hard time selling them. And I get people who are like, hey, I've got 50 electric blue Acara fry, do you want them? And I feel bad. I'm like, I'll take them, but I don't know how long it's going to take me to get rid of them in the Chicagoland area at this point. So Lynn says, I still have a dozen electric blue Acara. Yeah. So if you are breeding them, just please make sure you've got a way to move potentially dozens upon dozens of juveniles. Really beautiful fish. I absolutely love them. Very peaceful. They're going to get about 6 inches, and they are a showstopper, but they do breed easily.
Jack asked, can you have a betta with embers in a 7.5 gallon tank? Is that an okay tank size?
Maybe. I would keep the embers well fed. There's a chance the embers could fin up the betta.
They
Better
did with
luck,
ours, yeah.
Yeah, better luck if you have a female, I think.
Mm.
But if you feed those embers 2 or 3 small meals a day, you probably have more luck, especially if you give them some live baby brine. They might not be as likely to fin up the betta, but never 100% sure. A car guy says, how do I get calcium off my plastic aquarium lid? Plastic aquarium lid? You could try vinegar. I mean, that will sometimes take it off, but I mean, with a plastic aquarium lid, you can't use a razor blade, which is usually the number one go-to is, spray it down with some vinegar and then scrape it with a razor blade.
Mm-hmm.
Vinegar, and maybe if it's the underside of your lid and you don't care what it looks like, you could use like a dish soap pad thing. I mean, not with soap on it, but
Abrasive sponge.
Yeah, it's like
But
the
then you
green
might-
part of one of your
Yeah.
spongy guys,
Yeah,
the dish sponge.
try it.
Yeah, that's probably what I do. But if it's on the underside, I wouldn't worry about it. If it's on a side that's visible, then yeah, just spray it down, let it soak, right? Don't just spray it down and then try to scrape it off. But spray it down, leave it on there for 5-10 minutes, and then try to take like a Brillo pad sort of thing and see if you can get it off that way. Okay, hold on. Well, we got time for a couple more, I believe. Well, this is a good one. Relax Smiles, what fish do you guys suggest for a 60-gallon cube? That's a great look. That's a great footprint.
Boy.
Kind of depends on what you want to do. If you want a more community-style tank where the fish are all just kind of hang out and get along, a 60 cube, I don't think I would put any African cichlids in a 60 cube unless they were Lake Tanganyika fish. But I think that's almost, I don't want to say a waste of a 60 cube, but that 60 cube is going to be kind of tall. And so I'm not sure I would do that. I do like with the cubes, I do like the center wood rock,
an
kind of like what we did here,
yeah.
right? We have a rock structure. It's not a cube, it's a 50-gallon low boy, but you can see we've got the rocks here, we've got the plants, and then it kind of moves out from there. With a cube tank, I do like the idea of having multiple types of schooling fish. I love the idea in a 60 cube of angelfish. They're so pretty. I mean, so many different types. You've got the kois, you've got the blues. There's a green angelfish out there these days that are really nice. I mean, even just the standard angel veil tails. I mean, my gosh, could you imagine a marble veil tail in that 60 cube?
That'd be
60
pretty.
cube, if you've got that center structure and a lot of plants, I might try initially to throw 5 or 6 angels in a tank like that, knowing that maybe I'm going to have to move some of them out as they mature, especially if I get a breeding pair. If you don't like angels, the Bolivian rams, we talked about crebensis earlier. Nanochromis would be really cool as a cichlid.
Mhm. What kind of schooling fish would you put in there?
Well, it depends on how big your centerpiece fish are. I mean, you could go anywhere from rasboras if you don't have any centerpiece fish, because I mean, pretty much any cichlid's going to eat small rasboras. But safe, I love the snakeskin barb. I love the melon barb.
That would be pretty.
Yeah, I think people forget about the barbs sometimes. I love, someone mentioned the diamond tetra earlier tonight. That could be a really striking looking fish. Colombian tetra, the Congo tetra.
I was just going to say
Yeah.
Congo tetra.
Yeah, I mean, if you want to see some Congo tetras in all their glory, if you see my species profile, Melanie Holmes did I think that was a 70. And she had mostly male Congo tetras, and they were like, oh my gosh, they were amazing.
So pretty.
So yeah, you can, in a 60 cube, you can go with a medium size to a larger size schooling fish and make it look really cool. In a 60 cube, what else would I do? Candy cane tetra would be another one to consider that would offer a
be
lot of
pretty.
color. And some of these you could mix, all right? You don't have to just pick just one. You've got again, for the centerpiece, if you don't want cichlids, you've got the empire gudgeons, which we have in this tank, that I think would be really cool and kind of meander around the bottom of the aquarium.
Rummy nose.
Rummy nose rasbora, also the rummy nose tetra. I'd get those tank
Sure.
raised, not wild caught. A big school of cories, whether that's the gold lasers.
Oh, you could have piles of cories.
Venezuelas, Adolphi, even the stirby cory would make a really, really cool Cory cat. They have the long fin varieties now, especially like the long fin panda Cory. That would be interesting. Get yourself, I don't know, half a dozen long fin bristlenose plecos, maybe a green dragon, maybe a lemon drop, blue eye lemon drop, super reds. So that would be a pretty cool sort of scavenger fish as well. I mean, you've got so many options with that. Carrie says, first live stream. Love you guys. Well, thank you so much. Glad you're here. Thanks for hanging out with us.
Welcome to our weird little world.
Shirley says, I have a furcata with one pectoral fin missing. I put him in a hospital tank. Is there anything else I should do? I think he got beat up. I just keep an eye on the group. I mean, if it's completely missing, it's probably not going to grow back. If the fish is swimming okay and can still eat, it might just be one of those fish where you've got a misfit, right? But if it was something where it was getting picked on, then I would obviously keep it out of that situation if you can.
In the cube, the 60 cube, did you say rainbow shiners?
I didn't, but that would be a great one.
That would be cool.
Yeah, rainbow shiners or
just
dwarf
sharing.
rainbows for that matter, or the full-size rainbows, Bosmanis, reds, turquoise,
A rainbow party.
Mechalochai.
Yes.
Yeah, you've
little
got,
ones, big ones.
for sure. You've absolutely got some really cool options there. JD, thank you so much for becoming a prime timer. Really appreciate it. Hope you enjoy it. That's awesome.
I'm a car guy asks, my Bolivian ram has a faint white spot in one eye and he appears to be blind in that eye.
Yeah.
When I feed him, do you think this could be life-threatening?
Life-threatening, probably not, but I would keep an eye on it to make sure it doesn't get any worse. If it does, that's the type of thing where you could move him to a hospital tank, do an Epsom salt bath. You could use antibiotics, Miracin 1, Miracin 2, to see if that will clear up. Usually the cloudy eye, if it's not just an old fish, sometimes the cloudy eye is due to a water parameter issue. So that's one where I would go ahead and check water parameters, make sure there's no ammonia, no nitrite. Nitrates are less than 20 parts per million or less ideally. Make sure your pH is not swinging wildly. But if your water parameters are fine, I've had fish with cloudy eyes. It is part of what happens to some fish as they age. They get cloudy eyes, they don't see as well. It's the same thing that happens to human beings sometimes. Yeah. If it does slowly disappear, that's good. If you said your water quality is awesome, that's the key right there. All right, everybody, I think we're going to call it an evening because I know some of you have things like jobs and have to get up early in the morning. And thank you once again for our moderators hanging out with us tonight. Thank you for everyone in the super chats and the new prime timers we have, and all of you who ask questions, and all of you who just chill out and listen to us for 90 minutes on a Wednesday. Really, really appreciate it. We will be back, right? Same time, same place. By the way, would love for you, after we close out the live stream, if you want to leave in the comments section of the live stream, not the chat because we're not going to see it, but the comments section, if you want us to cover something, cover a subject in a live stream, leave that in the comments section.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
We love doing the subjects, and I'd rather do stuff that I know people are interested in. And if someone leaves a comment like, oh, that's what sounds good, give them a thumbs up on that bad boy too. So thank you so much for being here. We will see you hopefully same time, same place next week. Have a good week, everybody.
Good night.